having a fantastic holiday season, and I believe you will have the best year ever this coming New Year's 2020. In this video, I wanted to talk about Matt D'Avella's latest video called 12 Habits That Changed My Life. If you're not familiar with who Matt D'Avella is, most people aren't. He was on no one's radar in the personal development space like 2 years ago. Since then, he has blown up on YouTube very quickly to get over 2 million subscribers. In fact, he's probably the most subscribed personal development themed YouTuber right now. And his videos are a lot of these like BuzzFeed type challenges that just get a lot of attention, such as, I tried breath work for 30 days. I tracked every minute of my day for 30 days. There's others out there as well, like a day in the life of a minimalist. I took cold showers for 30 days. I quit sugar for 30 days. I quit social media for 30 days. And in his latest video, he kind of recounts and reflects on his last year of challenges. Basically, like a year ago, he set out to build 12 habits, one every month, and that's how he kind of created those viral videos and also tried to build these challenges. Now, I'm going to kind of react to the video. I already saw the video, but I want to play it through again with you a second time and just kind of commentate on it, because I think the biggest thesis I want to get across to you all is something I've learned and he's learned the hard way, and that's the fact that that's overly ambitious. It's a bit extremist to do these things, and most importantly, a lot of these personal development trends like cold showers. He did cold showers for 30 days, or caffeine, or waking up at 5 a.m. Those things are not nearly as impactful as the cornerstone habits you can build, like exercise. Those are just going to be so much better. And these weird, ridiculous, like habits like journaling or waking up or cold showers, they're going to have negligible impact on your overall success. And that's something I've always believed in. And if you've been following my content, I've always been a skeptic of these trends. I've seen trends since I was born, and every single time they get a lot of hype and then they die out when they've run their course and been exposed as not as effective as possible. So, back in the day, it was Beanie Babies, and then it was, now it's Bitcoin and intermittent fasting. And in the past, there's other trends as well. There was the fidget spinner and all sorts of stuff that will come and go out of style. And what matters most are those timeless, most impactful habits that really matter. But so many people get caught up on these trends, these new hot things, because everyone wants something hot and new, and they think it's going to change their life. Whereas, as you'll see in this video, it really hasn't. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. By the way, I know this video is 17 minutes long, so I may, at least for part of it, I'm going to speed it up to like 1.5 times speed, because he does tend to just ramble a little bit. And that's the first good thing. He realized that, like, he his goal wasn't to get all of these habits to stick, but some of them, because at least you're getting somewhere rather than nowhere. And you having extreme expectations to have all these stick is just unreasonable. And that's another great part. He documents his journey, and he, even when he makes mistakes, he gets to share that with his audience. He's built a massive audience from that, and the mistakes help him learn. That's another thing. The meditation for 1 hour a day is very audacious. I've read a few books on meditation and watched a few content from meditation gurus like Tara Brach. I actually even went to a seminar where Tara Brach hosted for the public. It was so crowded. I was like the only one under the age of like 30 there. Everyone was like 50 or 60. And I got a seat in the way back where I had to view her through a TV monitor. But the point I'm making is that you should not start out at 1 hour a day. That is like saying like you're gonna work out 3 hours a day when you've never worked out before. You have to build up to that. But clearly this guy was disciplined enough to just off the bat do this, which is crazy. But I think another great part of why he's so successful is his videography is just incredible. He documents all these things. Clearly, he has good camera perception, the depth of the lens, all that stuff adds together to create amazing B-roll, which is something I need to work on really. I actually checked out this channel. The first time I ever heard of this guy, Captain Sinbad. He is one of a few YouTubers doing similar stuff that have just blown up recently. And he does like half personal development and half like comedic skit stuff. And he has about 500K subscribers. Wow. That's another thing. I think, it's great that he has a course out. James Clear has a course on habits. A few other people do. And they're probably very decent courses. But make sure you don't just rely on YouTube videos because him doing something for 30 days isn't necessarily going to teach you the best way for you to ramp up and do it. For you, you have to build slowly, and probably 30 days is not long enough. A lot of people get this misconception that it takes 67 days to build a habit. And that comes from a study that doesn't have enough statistical significance to be really conclusive. Plus, they concluded that's an average. So, depending on the habit and depending on how tough it is, it could take much longer or sometimes much shorter. And this is great. You should definitely just get started with something, even if you don't hit 30 days in a row like he did. I think that's something that should be emphasized even more because you're probably not going to hit 30 days of 1 hour of meditation like he did. And he must have a good amount of willpower to even get to that level off the bat. So, this goes along with what I said about the course. Uh, don't just do what he did in his YouTube video. Sometimes you should expect to probably break down before 30 days. Maybe 14 days in, you're like, oh God, I really need to drink some coffee. And that's okay. That you've made significant progress, and you need to forgive yourself for those mistakes, which are likely going to happen if you're starting out and you have low willpower or you haven't built up that muscle. And yeah, just keep going from there. Yeah, this is probably one of the big points I wanted to emphasize in this video, other than the one which you'll get to later. Um, but I think the biggest takeaway from this is that you you don't need 12 habits to really change your life. Like a good 4 or 5 really impactful habits, exercise being one of them. Um, it will change your happiness, your health, your focus, everything noticeably. And I think this type of thinking that, oh, I'll just build a new habit every 30 days for a year, it's very indicative of a lot of young people I see who first get into personal development. They're very audacious and they think they need more habits than they need, and they think they can do it in a faster time than it requires. So I'm very glad that this man Matt um, created this huge platform to kind of just demonstrate it for you from beginning to end and reflect, so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. I think out of anything, that's the most persuasive you can get, really. Now, there is a huge trend going on, starting with probably S.J. Scott, who's like a personal development Kindle writer on Amazon that's gotten pretty big. And it's a concept called habit stacking that was also kind of popularized even further by James Clear's book Atomic Habits and his website. The basic idea here kind of feeds into the trend as to why people nowadays seem to want to build more habits in shorter amounts of time at once. And the basic idea behind habit stacking is that, after you floss your teeth, you do this. And then after you do that, you do this. And so you just keep stacking habits on top of each other in a sequential way. It sounds good in theory, but like the amount of willpower needed, especially if you hate doing those things like flossing your teeth, is just unsustainable. It's better to habit stack in uh, non-parallel. So like build one first, and then don't stack them on top of each other. So like don't stack one thing you hate on top of another you hate. If you hate flossing your teeth, and then you want to stack meditation right after you floss your teeth, and make teeth flossing the trigger for meditation, and then make meditation the trigger for uh, static yoga stretching, and you hate doing all those things or you just don't like them, the sheer amount of willpower needed, even though if you've fixed in the first habit of flossing, which you probably haven't, even though you think you have already, is just too enormous. So it's much better to just stack one habit like meditation after something fairly routine you already do, like brush your teeth, and then for meditation, stick it somewhere else in the day. So there you go. That is what I mentioned about Cornerstone Habits. This was mentioned in uh, Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habits. You want to stack habits on the you want to choose the habits that are going to have the biggest impact on your life. And as far as the research go, happiness will be increased when you exercise and reduce those endorphins. It'll also make you look better. It will give you more energy and focus, and so that'll improve your dating life. It'll improve your career since you have more energy and focus, um, and presence of mind. And of course, you'll live longer. So it's kind of that cornerstone habit that has a ripple effect into various other areas, which will feedback loop back into your other performance. Because if you're happier, according to the happiness advantage and studies in there, that makes you perform better at work and makes your other areas of life, your relationships, your health, your wealth better too. So it's sort of a feedback loop mechanism going on. As far as those other things, nutrition, and I think you mentioned something else, um, meditation. Let me want to rewind that. So yeah, I would say nutrition, of course, it kind of feeds into exercise. I would say they're kind of one and the same. So not really, but kind of like they function in a similar manner in a way. So yes, and then working on your business for sure. Like that's something I've been working on a lot. Like currently, I'm doing a lot of market research to launch a like my first official flagship course, and it's I've been procrastinating and dreading it a lot because it's just so much work, and you have to read all these Amazon reviews, and you could do all this work, and people will still not buy it. So I've been dreading it a lot, but it's also like one of the most impactful things to do to make more money. Like you can't avoid it. Like that's gonna if you want to make more money and you have a business, that's gonna matter more than meditation or any stupid thing like coach hours or eating only non-processed foods or uh, putting on blue light blocking glasses or crap like that. None of that's going to have a direct, noticeable, traceable impact on your income as much as just working on your business. And so I definitely agree with that. I know a lot of you are probably going to be employees rather than business owners. So the counterpart to that would probably just be uh, focusing more at work and reducing the time you waste. And then the second one would probably be investing in courses and stuff outside of work to better your life and taking the time and setting out aside the time to invest in your knowledge and skills outside of work. I don't believe it. Now, obviously, people are different. So, to a certain degree, I do believe it because maybe some of these people really did feel like their lives were changed by journaling or intermittent fasting. I can see that. Like a lot of people love the bullet journal. It has a massive following, and it's helped a lot of people organize their mind. For me, I read the bullet journal introductory book counterpart, and the whole thing just it seemed like more hassle than benefit to me. Um, so I think different people are different, but still, clearly, I still think that a lot of these trends, like journaling and waking up at 5 a.m. and all this other stuff, really doesn't have as much impact as you think at all. And a lot of times, I see this in uh, either messages to me or on my content or on others, and they say this stuff, but usually the people who write them are beginners. They haven't really tried it out themselves, or they've tried it out for a brief period of time, and through their own bias, assume there's an impact. So there's a bit of placebo there, and I don't want to discredit that because placebo is a real effect. But still, like I don't think when they voice that it's had such a huge impact, you have to examine where it's coming from. If it's a guy who's like, I spent the last 7 years intermittent fasting and it's made a huge impact, I'll be more likely to believe that, especially if you list the specific details as to how, versus an anonymous comment from someone who seems like they've been intermittent fasting for 17 days and their greatest benefit is just a subjective perceived benefit of a better mood or something like that. And trust me, like if you look into YouTube comments, there's plenty of people like that. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I had such an impact because I had this thing happen." But when you examine it, you're like, I don't think this guy has really done it for that long. Talk to a stranger every day for 30 days. As a person with social anxiety disorder, this was my personal nightmare. Um, that's one way of doing it. It's a bit of an extreme way for it's I almost always recommend the process of gradually doing it rather than throwing yourself in. I've tried both for that and for other stuff, and usually the gradual way works better. So So notice how he kind of throws in some stock photos of Tim Cook and some TED Talk speaker, and then Wim Hof. That's the thing. And notice how he mentions cold showers right before that. I'm going to replay it just for the emphasis because this is a very important point and probably another one of the biggest points I want to make. All right, so let's for most of those things, intermittent fasting, cold showers, journaling. I bet you that none of those successful people, those billionaires, those really successful people, have even mentioned them or do them. Uh, at least not very often, if at all. I have read dozens and dozens of books by billionaires, consumed thousands of videos and interviews and speeches by billionaires, musicians, artists, all these different types of people. And guess what? Like at that high level, no one really talks about coach hours or any of that stuff. Now, when do you hear people talk about that? Well, if you take a step down from Bill Gates and Tim Cook and Warren Buffett and all those people, and you go to those flashy millionaires who uh, have a large social media presence, or they're kind of like teaching this personal development stuff, like Ty Lopez or Tony Robbins, they're the type of people, maybe Tim Ferriss, they're the type of people who mentions cryotherapy, cold showers, journaling, and so forth. So that's a trend right there. I've yet to hear I've I've yet to hear one billionaire talk about the law of attraction or affirmations or visualizations. Now I'm not saying for certain that it doesn't exist because there's a good amount of millionaires who do, like Big Sean, Mike Posner, uh, but there's definitely a trend here. Like Bill Gates, none of this stuff. No journaling, no cold showers, no law of attraction, no manifestation. Bill Gates was just super smart, reads a lot of books about science. Same with Elon Musk. He wanted to build rockets. He read a lot of rocket science books. He had no degree in that area, and he didn't have to resort to cold showers or journaling or intermittent fasting. So my point here is that like unfortunately, we have a very broad, vague definition or reference point when we say successful people. And a lot of these people, maybe even Matt here, kind of just lump everyone into that one category. Whereas there's different distinctions of those categories. And of course, Wim Hof is going to tell you to take cold showers because he's like the world record holder for staying in cold environments without dying. So that's his profession. That's what he cares about. And unfortunately, I see a lot of people I know in real life who are into this stuff, um, fall prey to this and just, start learning Wim Hof breathing techniques and, you know, get cryotherapy chambers. And frankly, unless you want to break a world record in that, how much is it really going to help you? You know, Tony Robbins, that personal development speaker, he loves cryotherapy, but each time he mentions it, he prefaces it by saying that he walks like 17 miles a day during one of his speech seminars. So if you're not walking that much, do you really need that level of rest and recovery to reduce inflammation? Probably not. Heck, I bet most people watching this don't exercise much at all, let alone have enough damage and soreness from their muscles to do that. And I do CrossFit about 4 to 5 times a week, and that puts a lot of damage and muscle tear and volume on my body. Yet I barely get sore to the point where I need ice baths or anything like that. And I'm in a higher echelon than most people because most CrossFit members at my gym only go 2 or 3 times a week. So even I don't need that level of it. So really figure out what your goals are and then figure out if that person has achieved your goals. If Wim Hof breaks an ice record, but your goal is to make a lot of money. Does that mean cold showers is your future? Now, there is a bit more about cold showers that I'll rant about once we get to that part of the video. That's definitely true. There's a lot more factors than I would have thought. I just read a book by Brian Grazer, huge Hollywood producer. He says the factor to success that made him succeed is curiosity, which is one that no one really talks about, and that's a topic for another video. Now, this is one I definitely, uh, I, this is the one I'm most interested in myself because I don't know. I have heard a lot of people say that this is very helpful, and I could see because you're kind of getting an early start above everyone else. But I've always been a night owl, and on top of that, like I couldn't find any good logic to really counter the argument that like as long as you get the same work done or more work done during the night while they're sleeping, because if they wake up early, they have to go to sleep early, then it doesn't really matter. Um, but there's tons of people, at least people I know personally, who just love waking up early, and that was really never my style. So I'm glad to hear that it didn't work out for this guy either. That's huge as well. Like, frankly, sometimes if you really don't know and you're doubtful and you fear you might be wrong, just try it out until you realize that's not the way. Then you can be super confident about what you were doing originally. Yes, so that's a little head nod towards relationship skills and tips and about, you know, doing stuff for your betterment and then dragging others into it and forcing it and in a way being selfish but not thinking you're being selfish by kind of doing it and then thinking you're helping another person but really just forcing them to do something they don't want to do for your own benefit. um, I mean that's a whole topic for another day, but I think it's very fascinating that people are so different. Like, at least my circles that I follow, a lot of people love X, Y, and Z. They like rock climbing, they like running, they like waking up early, and um, you know, it makes me wonder, like, to what degree do I have to shape myself and my hobbies to fit into yours for your approval? Like, why can't I just do what I like, which is to sleep in late, wake up late? I think that's where the disconnect I always had was like coach hours can definitely, you know, help you from a health perspective if you really need muscle recovery. Uh, but how do you correlate that to like, oh, you're feeling lost in life? Take a cold shower. You're feeling unhappy in life? A cold shower will be the answer and teach you the meaning of life. Like, where did that even come from? I think there's just a lot of vagueness and broad terms out there in terms of like, oh, this helps you in this way. And then I guess other people just kind of like take that and let it run. I've seen these trends play out on the internet a lot. And then it turns one thing into this super trendy thing that solves all these unrelated problems. I think nofap is another example. Like, what's supposed to happen? Like, the shower is gonna like tell you, oh, your calling in life is to be a circus clown or something like that. How are you supposed to find your passion by taking a cold shower? It's better to just keep trying and tasting and interning at different careers. Absolutely, I definitely agree with trying and experimenting. I've experimented with a lot. In fact, I've done a few of the challenges he's done. I wrote a blog post for AsianEfficiency.com titled, I tracked everything I put into my mouth for 1.5 years. It was a macronutrient tracking challenge. So check that out. I'll try and remember to leave a link in the description of this video. But if there's a downside to trying it out, sometimes it's not worth it. Like Tim Ferriss sometimes takes it to the extreme. Plus, it's a sample size of one, so how statistically significant is that? But like, if there's a huge downside, like you get addicted to this substance, or you could get seriously injured from it, or mentally hurt, or there's all sorts of things where you shouldn't experiment. So, I never heard of this Julian guy, but I think a flinch is a catchy term for what is really being targeted here, which is your willpower muscle. There's a book called The Willpower Instinct that goes into a lot of science about this, but the basic idea here is that um, the skill of self-discipline comes from a part of your brain that holds your willpower, and turns out that it's twofold. First, it functions like a battery. It will get depleted after extended use without recharging. And second, like a muscle, the more you work it and then the more it recovers, the larger it grows and the stronger it gets. So in the same way, the flinch he's talking about doesn't necessarily mean when you're flinching and someone hits you, but anytime you don't want to do something, but you do it anyways. That takes a lot of willpower, and you can train this willpower in many ways. Cold showers is one of them, but it doesn't have to be cold showers. For me, I've just trained my willpower in so many different ways, doing stuff I don't want to, from exercising to conquering some of my worst fears like shots. Uh, and by doing all that stuff, pull ups, eating healthier than I normally do for consistent long periods of time, I've been able to apply my willpower muscle to new things with a fairly similar level of success very quickly. For example, recently I decided just to take a cold shower just because I wanted to that day. And it took me very little time to grit my teeth and go through that initial pain, which is the worst of like feeling uh, that coldness of the shower. And I knew that 10 or 20 years ago, I would have delayed that for minutes, maybe even half an hour, because I was so against doing that and I was less disciplined. And it all started from building that willpower muscle. And you can do it in various ways. It doesn't have to be cold showers. I remember jumping into an ice cold pool in the summertime because there's two ways of getting acclimated to the water temperature. You either jumped in all at once and then just dealt with that pain very quickly, or you slowly inched your way into the water until it went from your belly button to your chest to your neck, and that was very painful and longer, but it was more gradual. Now, I think yes, there is another. I mean, they're more of a gimmicky like challenge personal development channel, but still a personal development channel. Like they'll do crazy things like survive in Spain off $10 for a day or something like that. But um, I like the whole idea of seeking discomfort, but not for discomfort's sake, not when there's no other benefit. So there's tons of pain and discomfort you can get into uh, that just has no benefit. You could start taking methamphetamines. You could chop off a finger every day. You can cut yourself. You could do a lot of things that are just discomforting and painful without any real benefit. So don't take that slogan at face value. There are certain nuances. I think they're referring to the discomfort where there's some future benefit to it, like being courageous enough to give a speech in front of 20 people. So that's a primary reason why people fast, from a religious and spiritual perspective, and just from a utility perspective. Uh, there's a, a lot of people fast for extended periods of times in their cultures, and a great benefit to this is you essentially reset your happiness set point in a way, and you become grateful for what you may have taken for granted, because now you don't have something that's always there, and then once you get it again, you are grateful for it. For him, it was coffee. It could be something else for you. Now, Dan Bilzerian, that Playboy millionaire on Instagram, he's talked in a few videos about how, you know, since he's so rich, like he just takes everything for granted, and it sucks. And he says that like for an average person, a 10 out of 10 might be going to a 5-star restaurant, but since he eats that every day, that becomes a 5 out of 10 for him. And then he's always seeking higher and higher levels until now, you know, he needs like the highest Michelin star foods and restaurants and hotels just to be a 5 out of 10 in happiness, because he's taking those for granted. And he's trapped in this world of like this hedonic treadmill where he's not much happier. Um, and, if he were to ever watch this video, I would recommend some type of this like, you know, materialistic deprivation. And I would recommend not taking it to an extreme, although I suspect these types of people, Matt as well, like to take things to extreme. I wouldn't recommend going from Michelin star foods to like starving yourself and living homeless, but just like living in a regular level of lifestyle for 15, 20 days could really kind of reset your happiness and redevelop that appreciation for what you take for granted. Yeah, so that answers the question that I had when I first stumbled across this guy a couple months ago, which was like, why are you doing these things to such an extreme level? At first, I thought it was just to get YouTube views and subscribers, which obviously this works really well for since people love being entertained by these BuzzFeed extreme challenges. But it seems like this is his personality type. He really likes to just commit and follow the rules and take these things to extreme. And I've learned the hard way that that's not how you should do it most of the time. I remember that was how I approached studying and reading and finishing books. But sometimes you have to, usually extremes are not good. Um, as Charlie Munger says, in the case of textbooks, like sometimes I knew reading more of this useless textbook that the teacher assigned me wasn't going to get me any better results because I tried that for the last few tests. But then I had this completionist mentality. And I was just wasting hours a day finishing these textbooks, but I couldn't stop myself, and I hated it as well as he did. So sometimes you have to be smarter about it and think otherwise. Although that's something I would ask Bill Gates about because apparently he has admitted in a few videos. I think there's one by Wired that he did, um, where he says he still has to finish every book he starts. So I would ask him, why would you have to do that when sometimes you realize, this book just sucks, this book is redundant or repetitive. Um, why waste your time? I mean, you have limited time in a day. Why are you going to waste it doing something redundant just for the sake of completing things and following the rules and committing? But yeah, forgive yourself if you make mistakes. There's some research. I posted a blog post on procrastination, and it cited some research that the people who forgave themselves were more likely to complete a habit. Shame more than guilt will really affect you in an unhealthy way. Guilt to a moderate to large extent, again, not so healthy. You want to forgive yourself for those mistakes. They do happen. I don't think committing to everything completely would defines a great video. It's sometimes when you make those mistakes that do, if that helps at all. I think what's most important and how I've been able to consistently have it exercise and a bunch of other habits going, um, teeth flossing and stuff, is not so much that you stumble and you miss a day. It's though your behavior and mindset when you do make that mistake. Do you get back on track, or do you just let that spiral out of control and then you stop showing up for weeks or months on end? Same thing with nutrition. Same thing for reading books. So if you have a sense of excitement and energy and vitality when you make those mistakes for the next day, and you use that to get back into the gym, and so you don't let that train wreck happen, that is really where the difference gets made, because I think that's really where people let the habit just stop completely. They miss a day and they think it's all over. I also found that interesting what his seems like his girlfriend um, said, because it seems like his girlfriend did not understand it at all. Like, why is he doing any of this? Like, she just thought it was ridiculous and pointless. Um, so I found that surprising because I would have at some level, and maybe she understands this unconsciously, or if you were to really dig into it deeper, but I would have expected her to find it at least somewhat attractive because it demonstrates a lot of things that women do look for, at least on a uh, unconscious biological level. Things like conscientiousness, willpower, um, commitment. Yeah, so I just wanted to add that in terms of like sugar, quitting sugar completely, um, you don't have to go that extreme. Like same thing with fats in macronutrients or calories. None of it's bad for you to the extent where you have to cut it out completely. In fact, a lack of fat or certain nutrients really will damage you. What you should really be concerned about is too much sugar or too much fat, uh, or the wrong proportions of them. So in that vein, um, if you were to ever try those challenges, rather than cutting out sugar to 0 grams a day, I would just ask you to keep it under the World Health Organization's recommended daily intake, which is around something like 30 to 40 grams a day. And that will be very tough to begin with because, I mean, if you just take a can of Coca Cola, that's like 100 grams of sugar or something crazy, like 50 grams. Um, but it's doable for sure. Like there's huge there's certain junk food that has most of it, but then if you stick to like natural sugars from fruits and stuff like that, it's doable for sure. It'll be tough. Yeah, and that's another thing. Like some of these cool things that you'll see in the comments, like the comments suggest a bunch of new things that you should try. Some of these, like if you're not passionate about them, like it's not always the best way. Like one of the comments I read was, "Oh, you should learn a new language for 30 days. You can really get you can learn really get immersed in a culture and learn about that culture." And the truth is, like, there's so many better ways of learning about culture. And rather than studying a language from a textbook, moving to that country and talking to the locals is 10 times more fun. And you'll probably learn the language a lot better from actual people only speaking that language in that country. And then there's just some strange ones here that, I mean, it's just like how much of it does it really impact you? So I wouldn't say like you should do all of these things or you should do even half of them because some of them are just kind of like I think they just want it really has to align with your values, what you believe in, what type of impact you want to make in the world, and so forth. Like this one says plastic free for 30 days. If that matters to you, do it. If not, maybe not. If you don't like, I hate learning new languages, so I'm not going to do that. And there's been like very little use to them. Like, I know Spanish and Chinese to a degree, and that really hasn't been helpful to me in like what I have to do in my life currently. There's 30 days of meth. I mean, some of these people are just trolling or trying to a good get entertainment rather than find something that really impacts their life. Um, Raw food diet for 30 days, possibly. Uh, so there's some interesting ones. No buying challenges. Now that's an interesting one. Uh, so basically, not buying anything unless it's necessary. Read 4 books in a day, learn 5 words, take a picture a day. Um, Kiss my mom, bake something every day, quit social media. Now, some of these could be useful, like social media for sure can be a huge drag on you, and the comparison can make you feel unhappy. Um, you, you could potentially learn a lot by expanding your vocabulary. Uh, Now, there's some though that may just not be as worth it for some people. It really just depends. Like baking every day, is that really a huge thing for you? For me, no. Like baking, if I were to 10x my baking skills by tomorrow or a month from now, it would have very little impact on the goals I want to achieve in my life and what I care about. Some other person might really want to do that because baking means a lot to them. Baking means more convenience, more food. They can save more money or whatever. But those don't really apply to me, and I really don't like eating baked goods that much. So um, don't just feel like you have to do all these things and they're all equally important just because someone else on the internet said they were. Now, some of these things may be useful, but it's up to you to decide these for yourself. For me, I hear a lot of people saying they want to read a book a week or even a book a day or 30 books in a year, and they failed at it. They struggled at it. For me, I've been able to do much more than that for a few years now, and explaining how is a video for another day. But the big point is that it's not really some good to have some arbitrary number of books to read and beat yourself up if you don't hit it. More importantly, is to choose a goal that is realistic but maybe slightly out of your reach rather than just some crazy arbitrary goal that just because it's a nice round number. Because what really matters is not the quantity or the sheer amount of pages or books you go through, but the impact that's going to have on the results in your life. And quite frankly, sometimes out of all the books I've read, I would sometimes recommend reading one book 2 or 3 times over and over rather than 6 or 7 books in the same amount of time. Certain books just have much more impact, and taking the time to read them and executing on them just has it's just so much more than having that ego metric of, oh, I read this many books in this many years. And I think some people, not all of them, are trying to pursue that. But I'll tell you that if you're trying to do it because a girl will like you more, or like you people will find you impressive, really, it's had a very negligible impact on how impressive people see me as. Um, so there's that as well. Let's go. Exactly. So he's learning to find a balance. You don't have to go to the extreme. And if you miss a day or if you eat some sugar, it's probably good for you. Like that's normal. Now, is that the only way? I don't know. Maybe you can learn a lot already from his mistakes and videos. But I love the fact that he is adopting some common sense and practicality out of all of it and realizing that going to the other extreme is not the best solution. And now he's found a good balance in between. Um, so, you know, I know there's hyper rational people out there that are even more crazy than me and do things, but you have to sometimes take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Maybe having all these rules and buckets and ways of categorizing things or scheduling out every minute of your day to that extent could be more of a harm than a good. So you have to kind of be open minded enough to really consider all the factors involved and not just be like, okay, the more extreme this is, the better it is. Because it's sometimes worse. It's sometimes you sometimes lose efficiency after a dip. Now he's probably going to try a lot more. But if he were to ever watch this video, I would recommend, sticking to his current habits. And of course, you're going to try about out a bunch, whether I say so or not. Because let's face it, that stuff gets a lot of YouTube views. So there's no helping that. But um, I would more so like to see him document his journey to achieving certain results that everyone's looking for in terms of wealth, happiness, fulfillment, meaning, having more time, making more money, um, and having good relationships. These are things that we all try to kind of strive towards. Um, and so there's this one guy who did have a pretty good list here, the one that I just showed you. And I would choose a few from that list, like not buying anything um, for 30 days is a bit extreme. So, you know, I think from a viewer perspective, you don't have to do any of that as extreme, but cutting back to a degree and doing a milder version of any of these challenges could be tremendously helpful in you saving more money, for example, so that you could invest it, or uh, having less sugar in your diet, just slightly enough, so you don't have zits on your face, so you don't feel like crap all the time. You know, those are the type of mini challenges that I would recommend. For Matt, I'd love to see him kind of do the less of these gimmicky challenges that's, I think just don't have as much of an impact. Like I think we've seen enough nutrition challenges. I love to see him, you know, do some of the ones that I think will have a huge impact. Like don't just read 4 books a month. I want you to read 3 books a month, but make them really, really good books that will have a direct impact. So they have to be business, biography, or science nonfiction. Um, Scratch the learning languages one, but I would love to see him do something like quit all social media for 30 days, and then try and make $20 more extra a day for 60 days or something like that. Let's see what else he has to say. He's about to wrap up here. Hats off to him for that. YouTube is probably one of the more toxic platforms, and for him to have built this community, and at least from his perspective, um, his community seems to be very respectful and kind, which I love. That's not easy to do. There's mean people on YouTube for sure. So that's it. Hopefully you liked this video. Hopefully you learned something from my perspective and reaction and commentary to this video. I think he's doing some great things, and this is just a start. I mean, he could have a tremendous impact in the personal development sphere. He has achieved the level of impact that I can only dream of on my YouTube channel, and I'm excited to see where he goes. I really hope he doesn't turn into too much of a BuzzFeed type of channel, which I don't think he will. Like, hopefully, um, but it's such a fresh perspective. Like, there's a lot of these business channels where like it's an entrepreneur who's rich, raining down advice, but this guy's taking it from a different angle. Like he's just documenting his journey in a very highly well produced way, um, with the B-roll and the stock, and there's no stock photography at all or stock film stock footage at all. So very well done. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more stuff from me. I'm thinking of modeling one of his videos, but not to that extreme. So I'm curious, what would you like to see from me? Um, what if I did something less extreme? Because I feel like there's that gimmicky part of YouTube where I could do something that I really don't fully believe in for 30 days just to get a lot of views, or I could do something that I more so believe in, like quit social media for 12 days, or um, cut down on sugar to 30 grams a day for 15 days. That would be more practical and useful to me. So, would you find that interesting? Or is there something else that he hasn't tried that I haven't tried that you would find interesting that I would find fun that we could do? Let me know, and thanks for watching. Subscribe.